Today, the bell sounds for justice, equity, and compassion, and our covenant to affirm and promote that principle. May the bell's call bring us to mindfulness and bring fairness and loving kindness as unforced flowers of life. Good morning. Welcome to virtual worship with Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in White Plains, New York. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister of this congregation, coming to you from the parsonage. I would be in our sanctuary today, but there's some construction and repair workers at work there this morning.
I'm Adam Kent, the music director at Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation here at my home in Manhattan. Our religious educator, Tracy Brenneman, is out sick today.
Welcome to this home of religious liberalism. What makes a religion liberal is these 5 shared values and understandings.
1, learning. Revelation is continuous. Meaning has not been finally captured. Nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism.
2, freedom. All relations must rest on free consent. Because coercions may be subtle, the work of detecting and removing them is ongoing.
3, justice. We are morally obligated to direct our effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. Hence, the voice of the prophet is central and indispensable.
4, institution building. We cannot become whole, nor advance learning, freedom, and justice without good institutions.
And 5, hope. Things could get better. There's no guarantee they will, but through our efforts, they really might.
Today is the 2nd Sunday of winter. The gibbous moon is now waning after being full on Tuesday.
And Happy New Year. That is, it's a new year if you believe Pope Gregory XIII, who proclaimed the Gregorian calendar in 1582.
Or perhaps you prefer to believe Julius Caesar. On the Julian calendar, January 1 comes 13 days later than on the Gregorian. And January 1 is not the start of the new year. The Julian New Year begins on March 25th.
Which is April 7th on the Gregorian calendar.
The Islamic New Year began last August 19th.
On the Jewish calendar, the new year, 5781, began with Rosh Hashanah last September 18th. The pagan or Celtic New Year was on Samhain, or October 31st.
Chinese New Year will be on February 12th this year, and the Hindi New Year will be on April 12th.
So, when is the Buddhist New Year?
Well, for Theravada Buddhists, New Year's will be April 27. For Mahayana Buddhists, it's the first full moon after January 1, which will be January 28 this year. And for Zen Buddhists, there's no such thing as a new year.
I give up. To all our visitors, whatever calendar you use to mark your days, we're glad you chose to spend part of this day with us. Welcome. If you are a first-time attendee and feel comfortable doing so, please let us know by introducing yourself in the chat. The chat is also for reporting any technical issues. When you send a chat, check to make sure you are sending to all attendees and panelists, and not just to panelists, so everyone will see your message.
If you are visiting us this morning, you'll find a link to the order of service on our website, CUUCWP.org, along with resources to help keep us connected during this time. If your audio isn't working well, you can listen to the service by calling in by phone. The number is on our website homepage. We have a number of ways you can support and care for our community. For January, our Share the Plate funds go to the Interfaith Council for New Americans. We are able to take contributions via PayPal for your pledge, for the plate share, and for the Minister's Discretionary Fund. Find the donate button on the homepage at cucwp.org. During the pandemic, through the discretionary fund, I've been giving out about $1,000 a month to real hardship cases. That fund now has less than $1,000, so help if you can.
Thank you for bringing your bright presence this morning. Our shared light is a beacon of hope.
On the second Sunday of each season, we dedicate our chalice to our second principle: justice, equity, and compassion in all our relations.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of this board for this congregation, I welcome you. Here's a quick update of our building renovation project. The renovation of all bathrooms started on Monday, December 28th. We are making good use of the holiday break for the Montessori school to complete the demolition work while there are no children or school staff present. Thanks again to the building committee for keeping the project on track in a very challenging COVID-19 environment. Now it's time to light our chalice. On the second Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the second principle of our faith: justice, equity, and compassion in all our relations. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from Christine Robinson in your order of service. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
As noted last time, Church Reformation in Italy had a more Renaissance and intellectual flavor than in Luther's Germany. In Naples, the Neoplatonic Academy, including Bernardo Ochino, called into question church teachings on Christ's vicarious atonement, the virgin birth, the divinity of Jesus, the resurrection, and the Trinity. Meanwhile, in northern Italy, the Republic of Venice was a sophisticated mercantile center with commercial ties throughout the known world. The renown of its merchants extended to Shakespeare's England. Venice was used to diversity of custom and belief, and its economy was served by a broad tolerance. Moreover, Venetians, like the Germans, had a highly developed resentment of Rome's interference. Thus, anyone whose religious opinions made them anathema elsewhere in Europe might find a haven in Venice. Some sources suggest that when Miguel Serveto was arrested in Geneva, he was on his way not to Naples, as reported in UU Minute number 9, but to Venice, to which Geneva was on the route. The German Reformation focused on corrupt practices. The Reformation in southern Italy focused on reform of doctrine. In Venice, these two merged into a radical anti-Trinitarian movement. Serveto's books were being circulated and finding approval among Venetian reformers as early as 1539, before Transylvania's King John had been born. In 1550, a Council of Venice, representing some 60 anti-Trinitarian congregations, adopted a 10-point statement of faith, declaring: 1. Christ is human, not God, born of Joseph and Mary, but filled with all the powers of God. 2. Mary and Joseph had other sons and daughters after Christ. 3. Where Scripture speaks of angels, it means humans appointed by God for a given purpose. 4. There is no devil other than human imprudence. 5. The wicked do not rise at the last day, but only the elect. 6. There is no hell but the grave. 7. When the elect die, they sleep until the judgment day, when all shall be raised. 8. The souls of the wicked perish with the body, as do all other animals. 9. Human procreation has from God the power of producing flesh and spirit. 10. The elect are justified by faith alone, not by an atonement from Christ's death. As noted last time, Church Reformation in Italy had a more Renaissance and intellectual flavor than in Luther's Germany. In Naples, the Neoplatonic Academy, including Bernardo Ochino, called into question church teachings on Christ's vicarious atonement, the virgin birth, the divinity of Jesus, the resurrection, and the Trinity. Meanwhile, in northern Italy, the Republic of Venice was a sophisticated mercantile center with commercial ties throughout the known world. The renown of its merchants extended to Shakespeare's England. Venice was used to diversity of custom and belief, and its economy was served by a broad tolerance. Moreover, Venetians, like the Germans, had a highly developed resentment of Rome's interference. Thus, anyone whose religious opinions made them anathema elsewhere in Europe might find a haven in Venice. Some sources suggest that when Miguel Serveto was arrested in Geneva, he was on his way not to Naples, as reported in UU Minute number 9, but to Venice, to which Geneva was on the route. The German Reformation focused on corrupt practices. The Reformation in southern Italy focused on reform of doctrine. In Venice, these two merged into a radical anti-Trinitarian movement. Serveto's books were being circulated and finding approval among Venetian reformers as early as 1539, before Transylvania's King John had been born. In 1550, a Council of Venice, representing some 60 anti-Trinitarian congregations, adopted a 10-point statement of faith, declaring 1. Christ is human, not God, born of Joseph and Mary, but filled with all the powers of God. 2. Mary and Joseph had other sons and daughters after Christ. 3. Where Scripture speaks of angels, it means humans appointed by God for a given purpose. 4. There is no devil other than human imprudence. 5. The wicked do not rise at the last day, but only the elect. 6. There is no hell but the grave. 7. When the elect die, they sleep until the judgment day, when all shall be raised. 8. The souls of the wicked perish with the body, as do all other animals. 9. Human procreation has from God the power of producing flesh and spirit. 10. The elect are justified by faith alone, not by an atonement from Christ's death.
The solo piano music I'm performing this morning consists entirely of pieces called preludes. Some of them, like the Bach Prelude and Fugue I played at the beginning of the gathering music, are preludes to something else. They are pieces composed with a sense of intention, the intention to introduce or pave the way for something bigger or for something more formal. Other pieces are simply called prelude. They exist only for their own sake, or perhaps to introduce other preludes in pieces published as sets of preludes. So here are some examples of the latter. This is one of Chopin's 24 preludes in A-flat major.
If you have a joy, sorrow, or milestone that you'd like to share, I invite you to enter it into the chat now. As you do so, please make the first word be either joy, sorrow, or milestone, so that as I scan through the chat stream during the prayer, I can easily identify which messages are meant for me to say out loud. And as always, that part of the prayer where I speak your words will not be included when this service is posted later on YouTube. The year 2020 is behind us. It was a good year. I know some of you are thinking, how could he say that? Word on the street is that 2020 was an awful year. And many of us, I know, did experience it that way. In 2019, 2.85 million Americans died. In 2020, preliminary estimates are that about 3.1 million US residents died. In other words, imagine a randomly selected group of 1,600 people living in the US. In any such group, 14 of them would normally be expected to die in the course of 1 year. In 2020, 15 instead of 14 died. That one additional death out of every 1,600 people in the US amounted to a big loss. Some of us have been directly touched by that loss. We've lost loved ones, and we grieve. The pandemic also took away workers and talents and repositories of wisdom whose work and talent and wisdom we all benefited from. It brought us new stresses, some of us a lot. Many of us experienced isolation and loneliness. I did. Many of us experienced anxiety wrought by the coronavirus. The number of Americans reporting depression symptoms tripled. There's been a lot of unemployment and economic hardship. Eviction moratoria have helped keep many people in their homes, but the back rent they owe keeps mounting. An estimated 23 million are at risk of eviction when the moratorium expires on January 31. So how can I say it's been a good year? I don't mean it's been a year without hardship, without suffering. No year ever has been. It's been a good year because those of us who are still here are still here. We got through it together. Things may get worse before they get better, but we have each other. It was the year that George Floyd died beneath the knee of a Minneapolis police officer, and there were protests around the world about that. There's a lot more reckoning that's still to come, and make no mistake, it might not come, but 2020 has the best chance of being the beginning of real police form of any year in my lifetime. 2020 saw a plus-sized woman in the captain's chair of the headline starship of a Star Trek series. Good news for body positivity. Many families were stressed, but the 6th annual American Family Survey revealed that over half the respondents said they now appreciate their partner more. More families said they were able to eat dinner together every day. 32% reported less than average tension in their household. Working from home increased, and on average, this improved employee happiness. Remote learning was a challenge for a lot of kids and their families. But for many transgender children, it was a blessing to have respite from peers who don't understand. The climate crisis continued. 2020 was the hottest year on record. Fire destruction set new records. Hurricane activity set new records. But 2020 also saw the European Green Deal tackling climate change at its core. China, the world's largest carbon emitter, along with the UK, France, and Japan, made net zero carbon pledges. And in the US, 2020 brought an election that will, in 17 more days, put a man and a woman in the White House who are not climate deniers. A growing number of countries now support adding ecocide to the crimes prosecuted at the International Criminal Court. ExxonMobil is no longer the largest U.S. energy company. It was overtaken by NextEra, a wind power supplier. Thank you, 2020. In 2020, the International Energy Agency declared solar power is now the cheapest electricity in history. Though a rebound in CO2 is expected in 2021, 2020 saw worldwide CO2 emissions fall by 7%. We saw ourselves rise to challenges. A lot of people made masks and wore them. Food banks dramatically ramped up in response to greatly increased need, thanks to generous donations from businesses, churches, individuals, and lots of extra volunteer help. Our community UU congregation was among those stepping up. An email from CUUC member Nicole Turrigan this week reported that our Hunger and Homelessness Hope Kitchen team in 2020 provided more than 1,100 pounds of chicken, over 600 pounds of vegetables, almost 9,000 eggs and corresponding sandwiches, countless baked goods, sweets, and treats. Thank you. Our nation's science and medical research community rose to the challenge and cut the speed record for vaccine development, doing in 1 year what has often taken 10 to 15 years. Heroes emerged all over. I call that a good year. And we have each other. I call that a good year. Now let us sing and affirm together the aspiration from We Would Be One.
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all the members and visitors who would like to affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. The French used to use the verb préluder to describe the art of improvising before you played a bigger, more serious piece. So in that spirit, this particular prelude by Chopin I'm going to play for you now seems to be one of these meandering pieces that's looking for its destination.
We have been weighed down by sadness. We've sometimes felt alone. Yet in 2020, we were also profoundly struck by wonder. We raised our fists in anger, and we learned again how much we need each other. We still are learning that. But all in all, I'd say this year in flight together has been good. Shall we do this 2021 thing? Stick together for another year? What say we make one more circle round the sun?
Down by sadness like a stone. We have yearned. We have sometimes felt so utterly alone. While we turn, we've been stricken by the wonder of it all. Stricken down. We have sometimes felt so faint we want to fall. Overcome, but all in all, I'd say this year in flight together has been fun. What say we make one more circle round the sun? Fists in anger and we've tried. Work it out. That we need each other, we cannot deny. There's no doubt. Let us leave another dream in outer space while we're turning on this planet home that holds our human race. We still are learning, all in all. Say this year in flight together has been fun. What say we make one more circle around the sun? Say this year in flight together has been a good one. What say we make one more circle around the sun?
Good morning. I'm Robin Roque, co-chair of the Refugee Resettlement Social Justice Team. This month, our plate is shared with the Interfaith Council for New Americans in Westchester, or ICNA. CUUC is one of 4 faith communities that formed ICNA about 4 years ago. During this time, we have provided financial and logistical support to 3 families from Afghanistan that have resettled in White Plains and New Rochelle: the Ghaffors, the Islas, and the Ghafouris. We have also provided financial support for a 4th family upstate. Our social justice team members have also generously given of their time. Jane Dixon serves as co-chair of ICNA, and Terry Kung is chair of the Education Committee, a role in which she communicates with schools and arranges volunteer tutoring, story times, and craft Zooms. Others have helped set up apartments, driven family members to countless appointments and activities, led conversation groups, babysat, knit winter hats, and generally helped the families acclimate to our area. CUUC has hosted meetings for ICNA and other refugee groups. Members have provided important employment contacts, and we have supported the catering business of one of the refugee women. It truly has taken a village to successfully support the resettlement of these refugee families in our area.
CUUC has done an incredible job. We're actually one of the smaller congregations that's part of ICNA, but our work and our efforts have really shown. To that end, I have a letter that's been sent by my co-chair, Jeff Swarz, that he has written to each of you. And I'd like to read it now. Dear friends at CUUC, Jane and I both have refugee stories in our family history. The word pogrom is rarely heard these days, but that is exactly what is occurring in countries in the Middle East and Africa. Afghanistan is one such example where militant religious groups such as the Taliban target those seeking civil liberties and safety for their families. ICNA has worked to settle refugee families who have faced life-threatening danger in Afghanistan. Many of you know these families who are now thriving in our country, husbands employed, their wives donating their time and sewing skills making masks, and the children in school all learning and becoming Americans. Through your dedication and hard work, as well as your financial support, we have been highly successful. 8 adults and 10 children may not seem like much of a dent in the larger scheme of an estimated 79 million internally displaced persons and refugees, but it is meaningful as the children saved today will grow and have children, and they will have children, and those children will become a part of the fabric of American society. Thus, ICNA has decided that with a new president and more empathetic policies towards refugees, we should continue our mission to help these families, no matter what country they come from. President-elect Biden has stated that in 2021, he will issue an executive order allowing 125,000 refugees to enter the US, a considerable increase from the current paltry 18,000, of which only 8,000 were actually admitted in 2020. With the implacable tenacity that has driven us all these past few years, we have decided to raise funds for the expected call we will get once again to assist a family fleeing from religious intolerance or fear of rape and/or murder in a country that is no longer safe for them. We are cognizant of the challenging times we live in, and we know that all of you give your time and precious dollars to many charitable causes that you believe in. But we hope and pray that you will once again give to ICNA so that we can continue our much needed work. We want to continue to greet these new refugees with open arms, an open heart, security, and love. Warmest regards, Jeff Swarz. And with those words, we hope that you will be generous with your plate share this month. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jane and Robin and everyone who has been supporting our refugee resettlement team. Now let us pray. Dear spirits of life and love, thank you for the heroes, healthcare workers, workers for justice, activists, the teachers, scientists, peacemakers and healers, the bringers of light and hope in ways great and small, and all people that ever stood by us when we needed a friend. Thank you. When we are heavy and need comfort, may we hear your voice bidding us to comfort others and lighten their burdens. May we appreciate our lives, love ourselves, and love our neighbors as ourselves. And thus may self-compassion flower into compassion for all. Help us bear in mind all the suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic, from recent disasters such as the earthquake in Croatia, mudslides in Norway and Japan, floods, gales, and snow in the UK, from disappearances in Turkey, Belarus, and Russia, from drought, starvation, and oppression in Yemen, Syria, Kurdistan, Afghanistan, Egypt, Libya, and so many parts of our world. Help us be vehicles of love and justice. We ask of ourselves the mindful intention to delight in what is good, to confront what is cruel, to heal what is broken. Amen. I ask you now to observe 30 seconds of silence. Blessed be. Amen.
Calling all you hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling all you hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I can, I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine.
A prelude by Claude Debussy, Des pas sur la neige, footprints in the snow.
The first Sunday of every month, our suggested spiritual practice is an eco-spiritual practice. Brought to you by CUUC's Environmental Practices Social Justice Team, eco-spiritual practice is oriented toward developing spirituality through our connection with our planet home and our responsibility to care for it. This month's practice, Widening Our Circle, involves reflecting on the ways we are interconnected, the ways the Earth systems are interconnected, and how what we do to one part of the Earth, we do to the entire Earth and to ourselves. Drought in Africa churns up dust into the atmosphere. The dust travels across the Atlantic and affects cloud formation over the Caribbean. A man orders a burger. The burger, shipped from South America, came from a cow raised on land that was formerly part of the Amazon rainforest, now burned and cleared for grazing. Or, more positively, a teenager, after learning of the crisis in the rainforest, decides to skip the trip to the burger place and packs a vegetarian lunch instead. The suggested practices this month include degrees of gratitude, where you recall all the beings and systems that brought you a meal. Mindful choices involves journaling reflections about how and what you consume and whether it may be changeable. The How Wide Is Your Circle exercise will help deepen awareness of the interconnected web that brought the items you are surrounded by. Activities for your eco-spiritual group and questions for group discussion are also included. See the post, Widening Our Circle, at cucmatters.org. The link is in your eCommunitarian.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind?
Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup
Happy New Year, everybody. Do you have any New Year's resolutions? Our theme for the month of January is intention. Our journey groups, which have been continuing to meet by Zoom through the pandemic, will be exploring the topic intention this month. These small groups are the best means we have as a congregation for helping each other deepen our wisdom, grow, and change. Everyone is invited. You don't have to be a member here. You'll find the online sign-up form at cuucwp.org. Each month, there's an issue of On the Journey that explores our theme of the month. The January issue is now out, which I think is worth your time to read, independently of the value of being in a journey group. Intention. What do you intend? To live intentionally, to be directed through each day by something other than habit and the impulses of the moment, requires articulating to ourselves, if not to anyone else, our intention. New Year's resolutions are one kind of intention. So let me talk about that some. Maybe the very idea of New Year's resolutions no longer or never has appealed to you. Maybe resolutions somehow don't make sense in these pandemic times. Maybe you're thinking, let's just get through this. I'll think about living more intentionally when the pandemic is over. I understand. Still, here are 3 resolutions worth considering if you aren't already doing them, pandemic or no. 1, morning movement. First thing after waking up while you're still in your pajamas, move around for 7 minutes. Jump up and down and shake, some stretches and exercises. Less than 10 minutes. 2, set work boundaries. If you have a job, whether your livelihood or the job you give yourself in retirement, or between jobs, set a clear beginning time and ending time of the work and mark that time with something physical. If you're working from home, take a walk through your house or apartment or outside around the block as a symbolic commute before settling in front of your desk. And at the end of your workday, symbolically commute back home with another walkabout. So that work emails don't intrude when you're not at work, put your devices in a drawer and close the drawer when you've passed the work period part of your day. 3rd suggestion, make sleep sacred. Pandemic-related insomnia is at an all-time high. Make time to wind down. Give yourself 20 to 45 minutes with the TV off, devices away, just slowly unwinding before getting into bed. Relax with chamomile tea or a bath or light, slow yoga. Once you do get in bed, immediately turn out the lights and close your eyes. Sleep experts recommend against reading or watching anything in bed. It might help you fall asleep to count your breaths. Keep counting 1 up to 10, counting each exhale until you fall asleep. Counting breaths diverts your mind from worrying about things. Those are some good New Year's resolutions, some intentions that'll help you be happier and healthier. Every week here at Community UU Congregation, we highlight a practice of the week. Each time there's a new one, I add it to the directory, which is linked at cucmatters.org. There are currently 212 spiritual practices listed there, with each linked to a post of about 1,000 words that explains and details how to do that practice and how it's helpful. You could pick a few of those practices you aren't already doing and resolve to stick with them through 2021. Those also make good New Year's resolutions, and they contribute to health and happiness. You might also have the kind of intentions that we call goals. You might have a goal to meet a sales quota that you or your boss set, or a goal to run a mile in X amount of time, or a goal to fold 1,000 origami paper cranes. Goals have value. It can be helpful to set performance benchmarks for yourself rather than just saying as much as I can. But the topic of intention also points to something different from resolutions or goals. In this month's On the Journey, you'll read that Katie Covey says, intention is different from setting goals or resolutions in that it pulls us into who we truly are. Goals and resolutions push us out into future possibilities. To set intentions, we listen to our inner voice, which tells us who we truly are. Now we're talking about intention, the kind of intention that Mary Oliver is asking about in her poem, The Summer Day, which ends with these lines. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Exercise and sleep and good work boundaries make for good resolutions. They'll help you be happier and healthier, and that's great. Various kinds of performance goals might help you succeed at something. But what do you really want? If you got happier and healthier, what would that be for? What would success be for? I think we want to live our lives in a way that they mean something for other beings. We want lives that have value other than only to ourselves. What's the unique gift that only you can bring to the world? What does your one wild and precious life yearn to be? What's your ultimate purpose? The purpose for which being happy and healthy and successful are either enabling conditions or else distractions. Adam, what was Claude Debussy out to do with his one wild and precious life?
I think he wanted to tell us about faraway places, different cultures, in some cases, places and cultures which he had visited only in his imagination, as in this evocation of East India in his piano prelude, La terrasse des audiences au clair de la lune.
Suppose, to use the example in the January On the Journey, a youth wants to become the highest scoring player on her basketball team. She can make that her goal, and now she's got a performance goal. A performance goal is not anybody's ultimate purpose, but it might be a starting point for digging down to find her ultimate purpose. That digging might be done with why questions. She might ask herself why she wants to be the highest scoring player on her basketball team, and there are various possible answers. She might want to impress a certain prospective mate she has her eye on. She might be angling for a scholarship to go to college, which would otherwise be unaffordable. There are any number of other possible answers. To keep digging, keep asking why. If the first answer was to impress a prospective mate, why would she want to impress that prospective mate? If she was to get a scholarship, why does she want to go to college? She might get a chain that looks like that, that looks like this. I want to be a top scorer because I want to impress so-and-so, because I eventually want to have a long, happy marriage like my grandparents had, because I want a deep and lasting connection to another human being, because I want to learn to love other people genuinely, and also myself. And now we've reached an ultimate, to love genuinely others and self. A very different chain might have emerged. I want to be top scorer because I want to get a scholarship to college, because I want to learn about international politics, because I want to work through those channels to help bring solutions to major world problems, because I want to be part of reducing certain kinds of suffering. Whatever it might be, when you get to that ultimate that puts a stop to further why questions, that's your great vow, your true intention in life, your ultimate purpose. When our young basketball player first formed her determination to be her team's top scorer, there were almost certainly a variety of different urges at work. If you met this young person and got to talking and she mentioned that she wanted to be her team's top scorer and you asked why, she would probably say something that she thought would sound good to you. When we explain ourselves to ourselves, something similar is likely to happen. We tell ourselves something that sounds good to us at the time. So simply pressing the why question might not be effective at getting at your ultimate purpose. There are some questions as part of this month's spiritual exercise in On the Journey to help you discern your true intention, your ultimate purpose in life. Complete these sentences. My most important promise to myself is, I will help others by. Because of me, my children will understand that. I have always wanted to. I am on earth too. And so on. There are 19 sentences to complete for this month's exercise. The instructions say, trust your instincts. Don't spend time pondering what to think, what to put in the blank. Just write down what pops into mind. Something in you knows what your life's true intention is, and it isn't your thinking, calculating mind. The best way to bring it out is to put thinking, calculating mind in abeyance. So trust those first instincts. And once you've filled in the blanks and completed the sentences, then bring back that thinking, calculating mind. Bring it back online to process the results. What do your answers tell you about who you are? Who you really most long to be? That's your true intention. That's what is yours to do with your one wild and precious life. Adam?
And another faraway place for Claude Debussy, in this case, Spain, La Puerta del Vino, Debussy's evocation of one of the gateways into the Alhambra Palace in Granada.
In the beautiful song we heard from Peter Mayer, One More Circle, he says that we need each other, we cannot deny. And we need each other for our intentions, not the judgmental shoulding voice of others, not the voices that internalize to become our inner critic, but the ones from whom we gleaned the sense we have of what makes a life meaningful. That would be our parents and other significant adults when we were growing up. My parents were both professors. Mom's field was chemistry and Dad's was English. In the early years of my life, they were grad students, and then they settled into careers as university teachers. So what I picked up from them was that the purpose of life is twofold. One, learn stuff. Two, teach it to others. These intentions, they guided me through young adulthood as I became a professor myself. A second possibly important source for your true life intention is opposition. For example, a child raised by a military father who's precise and strict and authoritarian and conservative might become a hippie. The hippie's child, tired of living out of a van, may become an accountant who lives in the same house for 40 years. The accountant's child becomes a rock musician perpetually on tour, and so on. Opposition to what they grew up with. People who become physicians often have had experience with illness or death in their early years, either in themselves or in their family. And their choice of a profession may be due to an unconscious desire to gain control over the helplessness and vulnerability felt as they faced sickness and death at an early age. Many lawyers seem to be impelled into law after an early experience of injustice. And then there are the people that inspired you, often in adolescence or early adulthood, when we learn about someone and admiration is stirred up, and we aspire to be like them. Martin Luther King Jr.'s intention to live a thoroughgoing commitment to nonviolence came from being inspired by the life and work of Mahatma Gandhi. You have heard, don't let others tell you who you are, and that's a good reminder. Of course, others have already substantially formed you. So when we say, don't let others tell you who you are, we mean don't let the judgments of more recent acquaintances override the settled intention that emerged from your sifting and weighing and balancing of influences that were your formation. In other words, we might indeed say, don't let old acquaintance be forgot. After identifying the sources, you can then ask, how did I sift and balance those sources? So what finally is my ultimate purpose, my ultimate intention? Your ultimate intention will have some connection to bringing good into the world. I was reminded this week, though, that it does not always continuously do good. Sometimes it's just what you do and it's just who you are, even when you know it won't do any good. A couple of days ago, on New Year's Day, in fact, Friday morning, I was downstairs in the basement zendo. I had finished my morning meditation and sutra recitations, was on my way out when I encountered by the door a mouse. The parsonage has mice occasionally, though there's been no sign of any for over a year. When we have them, we set out live catch traps and then release the mice in a wooded area down the street. But this mouse, when it saw me, stumbled along the baseboard a few inches and stopped. Her feet were oddly placed, her head unusually tilted. This was clearly not a well mouse. Fortunately, I live with a veterinarian. "Laura Kim," I hollered, "would you come down here, please?" She came, saw the situation, went and got a dish towel and a cardboard box. Throwing the towel over the mouse, she scooped it up and put it in the box. There was no mention of depositing her in the woods down the street. Sick like that, she wouldn't stand a chance. So 3 times a day, today being the 3rd day of this, Laura Kim's been going downstairs to check on the mouse. She changes the newspaper, feeds her honey water with a syringe, changes out the peanut butter, apple slice, and potato slice for fresh food. Suspecting a bacterial infection in the neurological system, she administers an oral antibiotic twice a day. The mouse hadn't been eating. Yesterday afternoon, there were no droppings, a bad sign. So this morning, when we went to check, we expected to find we had a dead mouse in our box. But the mouse was still breathing, and in fact, a little friskier than before. Her balance is clearly off, and she's still got the odd head tilt, but we think less so than yesterday. Is this doing any good? It's hard to see that it is. If you said to me, this mouse is suffering, the greater kindness would be to put it out of its misery. I wouldn't have any basis for contradicting you. I could only shrug and say, well, maybe the same might be said of me. And our best guess about what the mouse wants is that she wants to live for 1 more day, for 2 more days, maybe for 1 more week. If she keeps getting better, at some point we will release her in the woods down the street because she's a wild creature and she'd rather take her chances in the wild than live in a box, even though we know those chances are pretty slim. Either way, the little one is not long for this world. So what's the good of Laura Kim's care? Sometimes it's not about the good. It's about Laura Kim, and with a somewhat lesser skill set and somewhat lesser commitment to rodents, me, living our intention to serve life. We trust that this intention will often do good, but we don't expect that it always will. In this new year, may we all know our intention and find ways to live it. Blessed be. Amen.
Thank you. I'm rooting for the mouse. And please sing along with the Hal Leonard Chorale, hymn number 1074 in our teal hymnal, Turn the World Around.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around.
We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living in the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living in the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life.
Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are?
See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are?
Do you know who I am?
Do I know who you are?
See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are?
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. The light of our time together, we now extinguish. We now go from this place of renewal to carry forward our commitment to justice, equity, and compassion.
And may the love which overcomes all differences,
which heals all wounds,
which puts to flight all fears,
which reconciles all who are separated,
be in us and among us,
now and always.
Go in peace.
If you got troubles, then I've got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. If we stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some other folks might be a little smarter than I am. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. Just me and you, boy. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.
One more prelude, or in this case, a preamble to Robert Schumann's Carnival.